Today's episode is titled From Community Roots to Cultural Marvel, Lessons from History and Hostfest. Our guest is Duane Brekke, a Hostfest stalwart who has not missed a Hostfest in all the years. Duane takes us back to the humble beginnings of 15-cent krumkake at the fall festival to the magnificent cultural spectacle the Norsk Hostfest is today. Hostfest's journey is a testament to the power of community, visioning, and the enduring spirit of celebration. Duane reminisces about the early days of Hostfest, where community's passion for Scandinavian culture ignited the spark for what would become one of Minot's signature events. Duane fondly recalls the excitement brought by Chester Reiten and other visionaries who worked toward a grander stage for Scandinavian celebration. Discover the timeless wisdom embedded in Hostfest's evolution as Duane underscores the importance of learning from the past to shape a vibrant future for the festival. Enjoy our chat with Duane Brekke. Duane, I want to say thank you for making the time to sit down with us. It sounds like you've been one heck of a contributor to the Hostfest over the years. I'm curious, could you introduce yourself to us and describe your connection to the Hostfest?
Well, you asked about my connections. My connections go back to the very first year via my parents. My parents were a member of the Sons of Norway Lodge in Simcoe, North Dakota, which may sound small, but Valva didn't have one, Granville didn't have one, so it covered a large area. I drove by the Sons of Norway Hall in Simcoe the other day, still there, little dilapidated, but it's still there. And in 1980 or 78, when Chester started this, they contacted the Sons of Norway Lodge in Simcoe if they would participate. Well, my mother and dad were very active in the lodge, so all the ladies got together and were going to make krumkake, sunbuckles, and all of the German goodies. So my folks came up to stay with my wife and I. We had little children, but they stayed with us. And the reason my wife and I, we took them to the auditorium every day with a lot of the goodies and the others. I can name you all the ladies, but I won't do it now. And the thing that I remember most was the second year they were asking me what to charge for krumkake. They were charging 15 cents for a piece of krumkake, lefse, a sunbuckle, or any of it. And they wanted to know if a quarter would be too much. And they weren't in it for the profit. They were so excited to contribute, to be a part of a community. And my wife, who isn't Norwegian, it was contagious. And we would go down and they were happy and they were fulfilling a dream, because when you're sitting out in the prairie by yourself, you're waiting for something to come on to bring excitement. And believe me, Chester brought it. And it was an answer to, and it just started. So my wife and I have been here ever since.
Focusing in on the Sons of Norway, for someone not familiar with this group or organization, who are the Sons of Norway?
Well, these are the sons and daughters of Norway that came over from Norway. Most of them, now going back when it started, they didn't speak English. And that was the problem. My grandparents initially settled, you mentioned coming over here, they initially settled in Harvey, which was a big German community. And they had a couple Norwegian neighbors, but it wasn't long because my grandparents weren't typical young immigrants. My grandfather was 35 years old with 3 children, and most of them were 18, 19-year-old tigers, similar to what you see coming across the southern border today from all those southern countries, the young fellows. Well, he had a family of 3, but he had a few dollars, so he came over here. But I would love to tell you about how they came across the border.
Thank you for saying that, Duane. I would love to hear how your family came from Norway or arrived from whatever Scandinavian country they came from to the Harvey area to North Dakota?
Well, they're originally from Reykjavik, up north. And that's where they were born and raised. And he'd been in construction and he'd been successful. But he knew that the future in Norway was bleak. Only 5% of the land area in Norway is cultivated. The rest is all mountains and valleys and things, fjords. So they came over, but there was a problem. My grandmother had lost an eye in a berry picking accident. A twig got in her eye. Well, when you come over from Norway or from any foreign country, you couldn't come over handicapped. You had to be healthy. So if you went through Ellis Island, they would do a physical check, and I've been there. My wife and I have had the good fortune of being to Norway 4 times. But we also went to Ellis Island to see what they had to go through. Well, he didn't go through there. He was a little smarter than that. He went up and around and came through Pennsylvania. So they avoided Ellis Island because she would not have been admitted because she was handicapped with a bad eye. So that's the reason.
Did that make the trek more dangerous or arduous if you're taking a route that is less traveled at that point?
Well, I don't know at the time what he was thinking, but he was smart enough to figure the system that with 3 children and his wife was considered handicapped, he couldn't get through Ellis Island. So he outsmarted this, I would use that term to make us Norwegians look smart once in a while. He outsmarted the system and came around through the back door and then proceeded out west.
And he made it from down throughout Pennsylvania and then traveled west, stopping in North Dakota?
He'd had a relative that had been here earlier and had settled around the Harvey area, but didn't last long. So he went back, and the communications was that the farmland was good, and to get over there and get some of that free land, 160 acres.
So your grandparents had been exchanging letters with relatives and people they knew in the area.
That's exactly right. They had communication.
I'd push back on you just a little. I don't feel like that was free land because I think those people had to work their butts off to get it, didn't they?
You can't believe and how many weren't successful. They couldn't endure the hard winters or the hot summers. Yes, it's a big endurance test, perseverance, and but the idea of free land, and until you've been to Norway and come back here to the plains, it's a stark difference. I hosted a group of 60 Norwegians in 20 years ago now, and they were here for 4 days for the Hostfest, and I did a tour, and they were amazed about the flat land we have. You take out east of Minot by Norwich, and you can look down towards Valva, 10, 15 miles of totally flat land. And they don't see that in Norway. So I made a route so they could see the prairies versus the mountainous country they came from. They both have their advantages. But from the agricultural standpoint, North Dakota had a lot to offer. We could produce good crops. They broke up the land, and he left Harvey in 1903 and re-homesteaded north of Alva. And that's the homestead that's still in the family.
Of course. And the Homestead Act, a very key part of what brought immigrants here. And I had never heard that piece before, Duane, put so clearly as to why there was an eagerness to leave Norway, not just because of the economic hardship, but you have a farm that is given to the first son. So if you're the second son, there's very little for you because the land, from what I'm hearing, is not inhabitable and not very prosperous agriculturally. So there wasn't as much opportunity to farm and to grow and to build and to be self-sustaining.
And what you just said is so true because it hit my family again in 1919. My dad wasn't planning on farming. He had an older brother, but he died in World War I, which just killed my grandmother. I mean, it just took the soul away. My grandparents and spoke very little English, and to come over here, and they had a prosperous first few years and built a nice farm, outbuildings, big house and big barn, and then to lose a boy in World War I. Well, that shook the family tree because my dad knew he wouldn't inherit the farm. Well, then when his brother died, he was the heir apparent. Psychologically, he wasn't ready to farm. And he never really enjoyed farming his entire life, but he took it over because he saved the family farm.
It became his duty. If that wasn't his dream, it became his duty. Understanding everything your family had sacrificed to be here, he couldn't pass that up when the responsibility fell in his lap.
No, you hit it right on the responsibility. Families were so close in those days. There was no radio, no television. So family was everything. And that's going back to the Sons of Norway. That's why the Sons of Norway was such a good social gathering for the community. They built this large gathering house, the Sons of Norway Hall, and had a nice dance floor. And the emphasis was to speak English, but like this, they'll turn around and look, nobody's looking, I'm going to speak Norwegian. So the rendezvous spot was the Sons of Norway Lodge. And they could get together and reminisce about old times, and they would have potlucks, they would have wedding dances. It was a center of social activity. That and the church, that's all they had.
And the Sons of Norway Lodge you're speaking of, your grandparents helped build that?
That's correct.
Post-1919?
Right.
Wow. And just to understand, the brother who passed away, who lost his life in the war, was he drafted into the war?
Yes.
That's really powerful to me because they came here as immigrants, became citizens. Then your grandfather wasn't expecting his kids to fall into war. I imagine on some level, they might have seen some of that war coming overseas, years in the making. I know a lot of immigrants were trying to get away from that, and they came here to the U.S. seeking maybe not quite sanctuary, but hope and a way of life, away from war and away from these brutal hardships. So to have your son be drafted into that war and lose him, my heart is breaking sitting here reflecting on that.
And a little caveat with him, why and where he was. He was, like I said, the old, but he had a way with horses. You've heard of the horse whisperer? The people, he had that innate ability to communicate with horses. He loved horses. They were his horses. He would have a team, and he'd go out breaking sod from early morning until noon. He would bring his team home when he would eat, and he would put them away and take another team for the afternoon. He never abused his livestock, never abused his horses. So he kept them in good shape. So when he was drafted, he was drafted with the Guard out of Granville, North Dakota, and he was sort of the veterinarian of the group. So here he is, self-taught how to handle horses. And he was down in Arkansas for camp, and he was like a veterinarian with the horses. Now remember, 1919 was a transition area. Everything was still on horses, but we were starting to get mechanized and modernized. So it was the transitional, and we're going through the same thing here at the Norsk Hostfest. We're going from the old guard, where I was fortunate enough to be 44 years ago, and now where we're going today. It's a younger group.
Let's bridge that gap a little bit here, Duane. From the Sons of Norway here in the late 1900s, developed a sense of community that grew and grew over the years. Seems like there was a magnetic pull towards this Scandinavian heritage that people were, I don't know if clinging to is the right word, but haven't forgotten. And your family clearly was still very in tune with building that lodge. Where does the crossroads meet in your family with the Hostfest and the Sons of Norway?
Well, I guess I'm going to have to back up a little bit. Someone never really left me. But I'm going to pick on a name that's big here at the Norsk Hostfest, Edna Solheim. She and her husband were a part of the Sons of Norway Lodge, and they were neighbors of ours. They had land right next to us. And she donated a lot to the Norsk Hostfest, Edna Solheim. Well, that mentality is how much she appreciated the Norsk Hostfest. And it helped the neighborhood that, so they contribute. And the difference between then and now was it was a not so much me, but it was incorporating the neighborhood. We're together. So the Sons of Norway was the transition from the rural area here to the Norsk Hostfest. Now the Norsk Hostfest then, under the guidance of Chester Reiten and his crew, they had a fabulous crew that started this. I remember when they started, the Tollefsons and all of those, I could give you their names, but enabled the older community now to come up here and enjoy what they'd worked for. And after they got started and the Norsk Hostfest took off and running, then they didn't have to make their stuff and come up here. They could come and buy a ticket and sit and enjoy all day long and walk around and reminisce. And like Chester said, and I had spent a lot of time with, the Norsk Hostfest was like a Saturday night in a small town. And we who grew up in rural, whether it was Mayville or Harvey or Velva or Powers Lake or Towner, Saturday night was when they would come to town and do their shopping and visiting with the neighbors. And, I happen to be very blessed working with the greeters out here. Everybody that I want to work with, you better come with a good attitude. Attitude is everything. And it permeates. So if you put a smile on your face and you go greet the people, you're going to bring the best out of people.
I don't doubt it for a second, Duane. Looking back on the origin of Hostfest, I understand it began as just a little community event. There wasn't necessarily an intent or a vision for a festival. It was people who wanted a place to gather, to share food, to share craftsmanship, and to share community.
Now, you asked about the origin of the Hostfest.
Right.
Okay, let me tell you what I know about it, and I think I know a little bit about it. They have a rendezvous point. It was Charlie's Cafe downtown Minot. That was where they would get together at 10 o'clock in the morning, and that was where Chester Reiten, Duane and Orland Tollefsons, Al Larson, Al Savari, Wade Davick, I may be missing 2 or 3 people, but I'll think of them in a week or two. But anyway, they started out, and that's how it got started. I'm going to disagree a little bit with what you said. I think that the thing that Chester and Al Savari and the Tollefsons and they were visionaries, so they could see a bigger picture. And I don't think a lot of us expected what we got. It would be this magnificent. But once they broke ground and got started, they saw the success. We entertained people from the Canadians into Montana. I could tell you stories out here about when we first had the Montana people come in. They would come in 2 weeks, not 2 days, 2 weeks early in October, because they were through with the planting their winter wheat, and they would park out here and they come to volunteer to help set up. They just loved, you come from a town like Flaxville, Montana. There's nothing there. They're wonderful people, but they don't have it. And it's, this is why it's important from Minot. We are the hub. We provide those people with an opportunity to see good entertainment, eat good food, and be a part of something big. And we had the visionaries. How we did the stage the first year or a couple of years, I can remember my dad making a Viking ship because he was so pleased with. for the entire front of the stage at the city auditorium, with the big Viking on both and all of the shields on the side. And then my wife painted them. And they were the little snowboards that you used to ride on when you were little kids. She painted all of those, and we put them on the side of the ship, and lasted a couple of years. And then we moved down here to the All Seasons Arena.
Right. And forgive me if it seems like I misspoke there. When the Hostfest became the Hostfest, it wasn't until the 1980s, to my understanding. So in 1975, that first gathering at the auditorium, nobody knew that it could or would become this. And then Chester, after the first year or two, said, no, I think this can be big. It can really do something. We can invite our people. We can celebrate Scandinavian culture, heritage, and transition, and make it something bigger than our community at this auditorium.
You know, you've heard the phrase, the right person at the right place at the right time.
Of course.
And Chester Reiten, with his connections with the KX and CBS network, when he brought in the great accordion from South Dakota. And I think that was about the third or fourth year, Myron Florin. Myron Florin came in, well, he'd been on the Lawrence Welk show. So that was, it's like you're walking by a bakery and you have the good smell or the aroma, and you go in and buy. Well, when Myron Florin was mentioned, everybody would drop their shovel or pitchfork and go to the Hostfest. And I use the pitchfork because we were all rural people, and that support it the best. And they still do. I think our participation from the rural folk is, and I use the term folk because Cap Lura, the president of Minot State, would always refer to the people as folk. And that was sort of folksy, but it was warm and inviting. And that's where we brought it together. So he had the lead, and I don't know how many years Myron Florin came here, but then it expanded from there. And if you get the right person, the right place, at the right time, and that certainly was the key for entertainment. And then people could hardly, I wonder who's coming next year. And it's exciting. And that's why I'm so happy with the good entertainment we're going to have this year, because I am excited over the entertainment we have this year. It's just wonderful to see that the people in the rural areas, and I'm saying anywhere from Kenmare to Crosby, way up into Canada, into Montana, they come here. They stay in our nice hotels. But the campers that are out here, just look at the campers.
They're lined up out there, and that's something that really jumped out at me. People will come from all over the place, not just our neighboring states. We have folks that come here from overseas every year. When you were first going to the Hostfest when you were young, what is your earliest, best memory of those first years?
Everything. Because it's the smell of lutefisk. I happen to like lutefisk. But the rumagrout. Now, and I have a little fun with that. It's like Reykjavik. The people have to learn to say the word, and it tastes better. Rumagrout. And if you can pronounce it and you can taste it, you savor it. The rice pudding, the potato club, all of that some of those you wouldn't get. Now, my wife has made most of those foods, and lefse and all this, but you can come out here and participate. And I look at the vendors and I just smile to myself. Look how much effort they put into this. And they're putting their best foot forward. And the same way with the Norwegian sweaters. I've got about 10 Norwegian sweaters because they were, the knitters. That's what I love most. So I would be here. I can remember when they would have the spinning wheel, spinning the yarn. And that's a part of our ancestors because they couldn't go to town and buy. My grandmother knit socks and mittens for all of us kids.
Using the term folk when it comes to Scandinavians, I believe is pretty historically accurate because they were considered the rural folk. They weren't city people for the most part. Most of the Scandinavian immigrants who came here were not necessarily coastal or living in the big cities in those Scandinavian countries. They were the townsfolk. They were colorful and industrious, and they made a lot of their own stuff. And as I always understood when I was researching, why is all the clothing so colorful? Because it was a patchwork of whatever they had that became their clothes.
I had colorful socks that my grandmother knit. How many of us remember the song? I think it was the great singer, My Coat of Many Colors, Patsy Cline. I think it was Patsy Cline who sang about her. She came up in the poor country of Virginia, in the mining country, and it was the coat of, and that's the way it was. The most beautiful sweaters. We had a group of ladies come over from Norway, and my wife and I have been blessed to go to Norway 4 different times, but they were over here knitting, and they would sit there and knit and sell their sweaters. But they could knit, their hands were moving all the time while they were talking. And that's what I remember about my grandmother. She was sitting there and knitting, always involved with knitting 8, 9 different needles, because they could do that to frame the backbone or the framework for the socks or gloves or mittens, whatever you did. But no, they were ambitious and industrious. They took care of their livestock the same way. And that was so important, how they took care of their livestock, because that was their source of survival.
Something that's come up throughout our conversation several times, Duane, is community. The sense of community that became very important, maybe even a driving factor of the glue that held the Hostfest together. What does community mean to you?
Well, right now, the Norsk Hostfest. That's why I'm here. I'm a little, obviously, I'm very outgoing. It's just been in my nature. I can remember, when I was in school, I was told by a teacher, go back to your desk and sit down. Well, I'm gregarious, but my wife and I are attracted to each other. We're probably totally opposites. And she is a doer, but I like to get out and participate in the community. I think this brings the best out of us. I felt sorry, and I still do, for some of our immigrant ancestors that couldn't make it through the winters because they were tough. But you had to have a little gravel in your stomach, that you had the grit to get up and get going. And if you're going to sit and wait for it, you're going to do yourself in. So you make things happen. You make it. And now, for those who really did you can make a pair of socks, or you can make a beautiful pair of socks. You can build a sleigh for your child, or you can make a beautiful sleigh. It's the same way with the team of horses. You look at the harnesses. Someone that would do a little bit extra, so they would have bells on their, so they had the jingle bells. Those were the little extras that made it a little plus. And if you've got that little bit to make it better, who could, just like rose mulling. I love to see those ladies do rose mulling on this. And you could have a tina dish, a tina plate, tina box is what you put your food in to carry. And I have several of those. And you can you can paint them plain, or you can do a great job. So we have people up here doing rose mulling, showing you how to make things look better. And that's, so you asked this wonderful question earlier, there's so many things. We can talk about the food, but the rose mulling. And when you see the wonderful work that some of these people do, it's just a thrill.
There is undoubtedly exceptional craftspeople here that have honed their skills through hundreds, if not thousands of hours of labor to produce the quality of work that you see here at the Hostfests. There are worldly artisans here.
Oh, absolutely. You're not going to find it anyplace else. I mean, I'm not saying you can't find it, but you're not going to find it any better. This is the cream of the crop, that what you see here. And it's just like I'm missing a great book writer here, Snelling. She can't be here this year for some reasons, but Laurie Snelling, and all of her works about the Red River Valley and the homesteads and stuff. And it is, she was able to record and write about the history. And I just love our history because we got so much to discuss.
Forgive me if this is a very broad question, Duane, but something that we really want people to feel or to know. And after you mentioned history, and we've been talking about community and the cuisine and the entertainment, but why should this matter to someone that isn't Scandinavian? Why should it matter if these were never my traditions?
You asked a good question. Why should it matter? I've been to Germany 4 or 5 times, and I love it. I love the cultures of different countries, and it's that's the difference. But it's the difference that brings us the sameness. They have their little area, just like the Oktoberfest with the kilt, or the Scottish people with their tam and different dress, but together it's a grand mosaic. And we bring this together, but it's respect. Look at the Southern, more their dancing and rhythm is different between the Southerners. Now we Norwegians have been considered stoic and I guess that's true, but
Weather will do that to you.
Yes,
winter does that to us.
Yeah, it'll keep you locked up. But the spring is coming. Spring is coming. It may not be the first day of March, but spring is coming. And spring is eternal, and Norwegians are eternal. We keep going. And that's why I want this to be a function of the future, because you've asked some very good questions. Why? If we don't have history, what do we have? We learn from history. History is the greatest teacher, and I've always loved history. And what we learn from it is going to be with us forever. And, you can put yourself in a corner, or you can get out and make music. And I wasn't blessed with a good singing voice or any musical talents, but that doesn't mean I can't appreciate good music. I love music. And I'm sitting listening to music in the background as you and I are visiting. And I do appreciate the chance to visit with you, because by now I'm not shy.
I think I have maybe one last question here. Now that we've discussed why this matters, and we've talked about the past and the rich tradition and history of the Hostfest and how it got here, how do we carry that forward into the future in a way that matters and younger generations will care about?
I haven't missed a day of any one. And I'm going to go back to a couple of different things, a couple of tweaks we had to tweak. And one of them was because of a disaster. I remember coming out here, and we were having a opening night, and it was in October. And in October, when a snowstorm hit this area, and I get out here the next morning, and Chester and Orland Tollefson and Chester was really down. And I hadn't heard the news the night before. Well, there'd been a severe car accident in Wells County where he had been and I'm getting off the story, but it does come into play. He had been a county agent, and he knew the families of the 2 ladies killed. And that really hit him here. They were coming to attend an event he was responsible for. And, you got to get into his mind and how he felt that it was because of him they were coming here, or as chairman. So we moved it up about 2 weeks. And, then that gets me to another story I could tell you about how, they came in from Montana. But you have to adjust, and that was one, and I think that was one of the best moves we made. I know we caught heck from a lot of farmers because it's too early. We're not done in the fields. But you have to make a decision. And we did, and they adjusted and they came. But, I got to tell you one quick story, and maybe I talked about it a little earlier, but all of the Montana, not all, but those from the rural came over here weeks early to help us. And I would go out in the parking lot, and these people loved, and they volunteered. They came over here so that next week they could go to see the entertainment that was coming in, and by their fellow citizens of their area. And I see some of the finest lefse making is from Montana. They've come here for years, and they came up with 2 big vehicles yesterday. So it's a community effort, and attitude, I've mentioned before, is important. But and they come with gusto, and they can dance and sing, and you just see the great artisans that are here.
If I'm hearing you correctly, Duane, how we carry the Hostfest forward is with energy, is with excitement, maybe some reverence. The people who are willing to travel and be part of this contribute for the entertainers, for the food, for the cuisine. We carry it forward like that.
All of the above. And just think, if we didn't have it, you wouldn't have a chance at this fine food, and the smell, the aroma, and you walk by it. And like I said, you walk by a pastry shop and you smell the donuts you stop in to buy. And it's the same way here. You walk by, and we're bringing them to you with the roving musicians. We have a violin player that's coming in. She's as sweet and charming as you'll be on Friday and Saturday. She's a roving violin player, almost like a fancy fiddler.
There really is world-class talent. And I wonder sometimes for those of us who live in Minot and we know and we have the Hostfest here every year, perhaps it's easy to overlook the possibility of such world-class talent being in our humble little town of Minot.
It is. We have talent in town. Look at the dancing, the young girls that do a dancing, Renat's dancing studio. They're fabulous. And we've had those skaters here, when we had the great skating team. But we've had it, and we're capable of doing it again. And we don't want to lose that energy. When I get older, I'm going to do something. I got a lot I want to do before I get older.
Should never run out of things we want to do because there is always more to experience, and that is a big part of the Hostfest. I think for anyone who has curiosity to witness with their own eyes world-class talent, maybe unusual and very specific skills. We can see musicians almost any time, but to see the artisans and the craftspeople, this is museum-worthy quality stuff that's here at the Hostfest in our backyard in Minot. There are people who come from around the world because they're curious about this, because they like Scandinavian heritage, they like this festival. That alone should pique our curiosity to get us living in Minot to want to poke our head in the door and see what's going on, because there are people in this region that have yet to experience a Hostfest.
And that's why I like when they're doing the In the Schools project, introducing it to young people. They have to find someone, and young people at age, or in grades 5, 6, or whatever, you never know whose appetite you're going to, and you get them, and they come out here and see this. We are so blessed, but you mentioned the rose modeling. If people would sit down and like I watched them the first time, and I sat there and I'm not very patient. You sit there half an hour and you get up and you say, well, they never did anything. They're so meticulous. It takes time. It takes time. I've learned to appreciate that. My wife's an artist, so I've learned to appreciate quality. And this is the finest quality you'll find.
All right. Final question on the note of carrying this forward into the future and inspiring a first-timer to come and join the Hostfest. Recommendation or advice you would give someone attending the Hostfest for their very first time?
Okay, see the different musicians. Gordy Crazy Fingers Lindquist is upstairs. Fabulous piano player. He's just fabulous. His fingers waltz over the keys. You hear them. Then you'll see the girl with the violin. And then you'll see the roving accordion. Then you take a slow motion and you go in and you see the artist in there doing, like the Andy Knutson's doing his artwork, or the Rosemally, or the lay work, or the knitting. There's a group of ladies that knit downtown in Minot at the CP Hotel, and I was hoping to get them here just to sit around like I see them knit on a Tuesday afternoon. They sit there for 3 hours and visit and their needlework, and you hear the clink of the needles. So it's hard for me to be specific because there's so many things that they should see and witness. And what bothers me the most is we don't have as many of the knitters and the weaving, all of that. A lot of that is lost art, but some of it's coming back. We have to.
Duane, thanks for your time. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. For more information on the Norsk Hostfest, please visit www.hostfest.com. This podcast was made possible by the Minot Area Community Foundation's Williamson Fund and the generous support of private donors. Thank you for listening.